You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is titled Welcome into My World with a Shaman Sorcerer. Now, I had the idea for this episode because I thought it just hit me a couple of days ago that I've shared so many things with you and, everything from brain science to ancient wisdom to cognitive psychology and transformational psychology. And I've shared probably in 80% of the episodes that I work with a shaman. And I've never stopped until today. And I didn't realize, let me share with everyone listening what that means and how it pertains to them. Because the takeaway is be very careful who you follow. Because many people out there in this day and age, really, they're charlatans. And they say things and they do things simply to garner attention and pump themselves up and their numbers and followings and everything else. And I want to share one episode from my experience with a sorcerer and maybe open a door to other sharings. Keep listening. Okay, so as I alluded to in the introduction, I had recognized a couple of days ago that I've shared a lot, or to some degree, things about shamanism. And I've talked about shamanism, and I've said my brother-in-law is a shaman, a sorcerer, a babalao, a nawal, amongst other things. And I recognized that, you know what? I've never really told you guys anything about my journey. Now, I don't know how I missed that, but I did. And in this episode, I want to share, and I was going to say an episode, didn't want to be redundant and say in this episode, I want to share an episode. But in this podcast, I want to share something that happened to me in 2001. And it pertains an experience with my brother-in-law, Don Javier. But before I share that, let me back up here. I want to go back to 1996. This is when I was introduced to my brother-in-law, Don Javier. I won't even go into the story right now because this episode might be a little, I don't know how long it's going to be, but I don't want to elongate it if it's not necessary. Anyway, I was introduced to my brother-in-law in 1996. And about a year later, he said, you know what, we're going to Chichen Itza to do ceremony on the spring equinox. And I went on that trip. And what we started doing with him is every spring equinox, we would go somewhere in the world that was a power spot and then do ceremony in those places. And the extraordinary thing is that my family has been allowed into some extraordinarily powerful vortexes and power spots on the planet. I mean, we've been allowed inside Machu Picchu, there we go, to do ceremony. And Teotihuacan. And my family went. I didn't go on that trip, which will partly tie into this, to the Great Pyramid, Cheops. My family did ceremony for 2 nights unsupervised inside the Great Pyramid and many other power places on the planet. So I worked with my brother-in-law from 1996 and 97 and 98. And in late 98, I moved to New York City. Now, why I did it is I wanted to explore more in life. I wanted to explore myself, and I'd always been in love with the idea of moving to New York, and I knew that I was young. And I moved to New York City. Now, I continued doing what's called candle work with him, which I'll explain in just a bit. And I did candle work with him, but I didn't go on a couple of sacred journeys. So let me give you the recap here of what happened. Now, shamans work in non-ordinary realities and other dimensions. And in my time with him, I have seen, I can't even explain the amount of things that I have seen that are non-ordinary, that are not of this 3D physical world. And I've seen things that you're kind of like, whoa, there's no way I just saw that. And I saw that. And what am I seeing in front of me? And what does this mean? And what's happening? And what am I experiencing? This is all non-ordinary reality. And so let me go here. And if I hop around if I hop around a little bit, it's because I have not thought this through intentionally. I wanted it to come as original as I possibly could share it with you. Because I've noticed during the podcast, many of you things that I just, say or take for granted, you find some kind of clue for you on your own journey, whatever that might be, wherever it might be, and however it might be relative to the content. So I moved to New York City, but I continued to do candle work. And what happened is I put my candles, which were called 7-day candles. You can see them in the Mexican stores or the Mexican markets. Basically for the, like, for example, South American cultures and et cetera, in Africa, they're the tall candle and they're cylindrical. And my candles started breaking. Now, what you do when you work with Don Javier, he works with the elements, earth, wind, fire, and water. He's a shaman. He works with the elements. And when you work with him, all of his work is not cerebral like this podcast here. Let me share a story with you. Let me, draw this diagram for you. And no, it's literally dream time work and work in other dimensions, which is dream time, because dream time runs over 9 dimensions. I'm going to use the word deep, but it runs through 9 dimensions. And so he connects, and I have many, many experiences of this. As a matter of fact, on a recent podcast, I told the episode where I was looking in the mirror and I was screaming at him, but it was me, and I was saying, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. That was in dream time. And when I need to see things or know things that I can't see, I will simply text him. And this is our little code word. I'll say, hey, Don, can you help me with XYZ? Can you satellite me the answer? Which means he's going to bring me some awareness in dream time for whatever it is. Now, whether I capture it or I don't, that's entirely up to me and my ability. So to keep this simple for now, is he has you burn candles, different color candles, and he always gives you assignments. And they come through my sister. She's the one who passes them out, so to speak. And they're different for every single person who works with him. And candles also are colors, and colors correspond to the chakras. And then the bowls have water in them. You put water between the candles with herbs and different things. So anyway, let me fast forward here. And as I said, I've seen a lot of things that are non-ordinary by doing this for 20-something years now. When I was in New York, my candles started breaking. And one day I'm like, hey, Don, my candles are breaking. And he started laughing because he has a really good sense of humor. And he says, well, you better be glad it's your candles and not you. I kind of laughed it off and left it at that. But I bought these cylinders. I went to Target or something in New York City, and I bought these cylinders to put my candles in so that if my candle broke, it wouldn't be a fire hazard, because I knew my roommate would freak out. Because in New York City, my apartment building was 150 years old. Wood floors, wood and everything. And I knew that I couldn't create a fire hazard. And my candles were breaking so much because of the energies that I'm like, I've got to stop. I have to stop this because my roommate's going to have a cow. So let me start the story here, and then I want to read something to you. So my candles were breaking, and I had a configuration and a triangle of 3 candles. And 2 of my candles had broken, and the cylinder, the glass part of the candle, which the candle had already burned through it for the most part, all there was left was a little bit of wax on the bottom of the candle. Now, what you do not do is you do not blow the candles out. You let them go out by themselves. So what happened is one night when I was going to bed, is I had 2 candles that were literally, they were pretty much done and they were broken. And my thought was, this is dangerous. I'm going to put these out. I kid you not when I tell you what I'm going to tell you. I blew the first one out and I blew down into a cylinder. You can see these cheap bases at Target. They're like $5. It's probably, 12 inches tall and maybe 5 inches in diameter, maybe 6. So anyway, the candle was sitting in there and I leaned over and I blew in it and I blew the candle out, the first one. And when I did, here's where I kid you not, it relit. Yeah, it restarted. It went out and it restarted. And now these are not trick candles like birthday candles, okay? So the second one, I thought, okay, look, just, Jim, just leave it, go to bed. So I did. Now, normally these would burn out maybe in 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half. And I went to bed. Next morning, my phone rang. And this is when, before cell phones and everything else. I believe this was 2001, before I had a cell phone. And my phone rang in my bedroom. Now, what I didn't do is I did not open my eyes. I basically, I rolled over, picked up the receiver, clunk, dropped it back down on the phone and didn't answer. And I have a good sense of time. I mean, literally, or gauging what we call time. I mean, I can literally, think, what time is it? And I will literally be within 2 or 3 minutes when I look at my watch of the accurate time. And so I went back to bed. And this was during the work week in the morning. I went back to bed. And about 1 minute later, 2 minutes later, the phone rang again. And I knew that it was early enough in the morning that no one's going to be calling me unless it was a family emergency of some sort. And everyone was fine that I knew of. And it was out of the ordinary that I'd be getting a call that early in the morning. And the bigger part of me was, hell no, I'm not waking up. I've got an hour, longer to sleep. I'm not gonna wake up. So when the second ring came through, I rolled over, picked up the phone, and opened my eyes. And my room was covered, I mean, covered in a thick gray smoke. My first thought was, holy cow. If my roommate sees this, which is why I got the vases in the first place, and obviously it made sense to get them. But I thought, if he sees this, and we had a 3-bedroom apartment. I was on one side of the building or apartment. He was on the other side. And he got up a little later than I did, I guess. I mean, I don't know what time he got up every morning. I don't remember. But I thought, oh my gosh, if he sees this, this is not going to be good. He's going to have a cow. Here's where it gets a little crazy. So what I did is I literally, threw the sheets off, the covers, hopped out of bed, and I quietly ran to the kitchen. And I grabbed a big glass of water. And I brought it back into my bedroom, shut the bedroom door, and I poured the water in the first can. Well, I think there was only one candle, but there was only one left. Yeah. And I poured water in it, expecting pouring water on fire. And there was literally no wax in the bottom of the candle. I expected it obviously to go out. What happened was beyond mind-blowing and shocking. When I poured the water in the candle, whoom, like a bazooka. And fire shot out of that glass canister like a flamethrower, and it shot literally 4 feet in the air. Yeah, seriously. And I'm like, no effing way. Now, mind you, I was in kind of minor panic, and I ran back to the kitchen again. And I grabbed another glass of water. Now, mind you, I was not analytically thinking. I mean, I just woke up, a few minutes earlier. And with what was happening, I wasn't really processing and thinking analytically or rationally. So the first time I poured water in it, boom, like a bazooka, like a flamethrower, all the way up a wall also. And it burned, they were on my altar. And it burned pictures and everything that I had on the altar. Okay, so I come back with the second glass of water and I pour it in the same container again. Pretty certain it's going to, whatever was still going on in that container was going to be extinguished. Whoom, again, fire shot up the wall. Explain that one to me. So then what I did is I'm like, okay. So I opened my bedroom window. I lived on the 6th floor of, which I've mentioned in this podcast before, the last episode, I believe, Setting Your Intention, 73rd or whatever, 170 West 73rd Street. So I opened my window. There was no screen on it. And I took the entire canister, which was hot, and I put it on my ledge. Now, the interesting thing is that it started screaming. It had a screaming sound to it, like a hissing sound. And I put it on my ledge and I knew it'd go out and it did, pretty quickly. Okay. So crazy, right? Well, I've experienced a lot of things like that over the years. Now, let me go to the next part of the story. So what I did that morning, I called my sister at about 10 a.m., maybe 11 a.m. And my sister answered the phone. She saw it was me. She answered and said, "Hey, what's up?" And I heard, well, she said to me, she said, "Hey, we had dinner with Peggy last night. Maybe she'll let you know you're just calling to chat about dinner." And I heard my brother-in-law, Don Javier, in the background. And he said, "No, he's calling to ask what happened to his candles." Okay. And then he said, "Tell him I will call him tonight." Now, he did call that night. And what I want to do is I want to read you, which I have never shared with anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I debated for days and I sat with it and got quiet with it. And should I share this? He called me and I grabbed my pen and I have a journal. I have a lot of journals, but this journal has been all over the world with me, with him, to Power Spots. And I wrote down as much as I could while he was talking to me. Now, what I want to do is I want to read you what I wrote verbatim. And the reason why I want to read it to you is because I think what I may say in here, that was not earth shattering, in my opinion. There may be things in here that people are like, that's valuable. I mean, that came from a sorcerer and a shaman. Because most of us that follow my podcast, we're spiritual. We're what I call transformers. We know, and I mentioned this before, we know that we're different, meaning we've always felt different our entire lives. And I've always been spiritual. When I was 15, I don't know how I stumbled, upon it. And this was back, I don't know, 1980, 79, 80, 81, 80, thereabout. I stumbled upon the Rosicrucians, which is ancient wisdom. So it's always pulled me. And I think people listening, I know that many of you are here for the life transformation, which literally comes, the reason I'm able to bring this to you and the way that I do is because of my experiences with Don Javier. And then I look at how that has shaped me and how that has transformed me and then what I can impart to you. Before I read to you, I got to tell you, just being fully transparent, I'm a rebel. And I was the one that for many years early on, I was the metaphorical arms crossed, doubting Thomas. Show me, I don't believe you. No, that doesn't make sense. No, that's not rational. No, that's not logical. No way that can happen. And that was me, Mr. Analysis, Mr. Analytical, Mr. 3D. And in my time years prior to this, Don Javier had always said to me and people that work with him, if you try to think your way and analyze and rationalize your way through life, you're going to be lost. And his mentor said to me years ago when I first met Don Javier and I met his mentor, who is also a sorcerer, he called me Jaimito, which is James, and it's a young James, like a little boy. And he was using that affectionately. And he said, Jaimito, you think too much. When you think too much, you make yourself heavy. And when you're heavy, you cannot fly. What he meant by that is I couldn't soar I couldn't soar as the being that I am. And most of us listening, and if not, this is your first episode, again, go back to the very beginning. And you might think, who is this Fruit Loop that I'm listening to? What kind of nonsense, psychobabble, blah, blah. Well, listen if you want, don't listen. It's entirely up to you. Let me read what I wrote. And if you hear any clumping, it's because I'm putting some glasses on for those of you that are listening to the audio and grabbing my journal. And so here's what I wrote, and this is verbatim. And if I stumble a little bit, it's because I can't read my own writing, but I read through all of it just a minute ago and I can read most of it. Okay, so around 12, meaning 12, noon, I got a phone call from Don Javier, his usual self, laughing and smiling. He said, "What happened this morning, brother in law?" Of course, he knew what happened. He talked about, in our time on this phone call, he talked about the realm of many dimensions. And then he said, "As I have no expectations, I did not know this would happen. This has happened to no one in the circle and no one out of the circle, only you." Now, caveat, when he says circle, he talks about people that are working with him, because when I moved to New York, I didn't know it. I had energetically left the deeper or more profound connected work with him. Okay, let me go on here. We have been giving you messages for some time. However, you have ignored them. If you ignore this message, a stronger message will come. You will not die with the second message, though it will be very strong. This message this morning was done in a way that it could not be rationalized with your mind. As you know, when you poured water on the candle, it ignited like fuel. This was done to wake you up. You have to go to Peru with me, and this is your wake-up call. This wake-up call has come from beyond me. You came to this planet for a purpose, and your purpose has to do with other dimensions, other times, and other beings. This trip will be very powerful, and it will be a very powerful trip into other dimensions. You need to jump in the shower and take a long, hard shower to wash the crap out of your life. You need to get rid of the crap in your life. You're very fortunate in that you have someone to help you understand your luminous body. There are not a lot of people on the planet that can help you do that. You have much work to do. You need to allow yourself to see yourself and know yourself for the first time. You need to realize that life is not about your conveniences. Life is not about your ego and stupidities. You need to learn to have peace. That is the most important thing to you. With that, with peace, you can have it all. You need to find the essence of who you are. I knew it the first time I saw you, and now you need to know it also. You need to change everything in your life, and especially your anger. Realize that tomorrow is not here, and yesterday is gone. All that truly exists is now. Learn to live in the present. Put your attention back on your spiritual alignment and learn to know yourself. And when you know yourself, you will then be doing what you need to do with your life. And knowing yourself, that is like a flower. You need to let it bloom because that is a part of you. Pay attention to your Nawal, who is teaching you all that you know. What power? And you have chosen to ignore it in the past. If you choose the path of spiritual alignment and power, what you will get will be priceless. You cannot ignore what you will attract, and you cannot believe what you will attract if you move into spiritual alignment. I am a shaman. I am a sorcerer. I am a Nawal. Some people think that I'm a spiritual leader. Some people think that I am evil. It does not matter, as I am what I am. Don't have expectations about what changes will be and how they will happen. In Peru, I will be in my silence, and so should you. You need to find total freedom and total silence. Give up your old habits and stop hurting yourself. You were spiteful to yourself, and now you have choices. You can allow changes and have it all, or you can continue to live in the hell that you have created for yourself. What are you resisting? Everything is up to you. Abundance is up to you. For you to have spiritual alignment, that will equal everything for you. Now, what I did say is I walked around, now, okay, I'm done reading. I walked around in a daze all day long. And he told me that night on the call, he said, you were in a daze like you were shocked because we touched your double, which means for everyone listening, the double is the energetic other you, the higher, basically like soul energy, spiritual energy of your essence that we actually air quote, the body is a medium for that. I share that with you. And like I said, I debated, which was left brain analytical. And I just sat with it tonight. And I'm like, okay, go ahead and do that episode. And I shared that because what I just read, many of you listening will pull things out of that by observing me and all of my, air quote, warts and all from many years ago, because I am not the same person I was by far, by light years, metaphorically speaking, that I was 20 something years ago. But what I just read is what I bring to the podcast and the flavor, and that we as humans, we learn to live in ego and crap and self-hate and self-judgment and self-belittling. And we learn all these toxic behaviors in the world that we live in. And we're taught these things by the world and by our parents and by our family and our schools and our socialization. And it robs people of the greater essence of who they are. And when I say spirituality, that means different things to different people. I am not talking about, let me be very clear here. I'm not talking about dogma, which can be an organized system of beliefs. When I talk about spirituality, a quote or a phrase that I coined, I did not even get this from my brother-in-law, it just popped in my head one day, is that we're not spiritual beings. Because many people over the years have learned the phrase, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. The phraseology and the phrase that I use is that we're cosmic beings having a human experience. And I've woven that into different podcast episodes. And that we travel. There's no such thing as past lives because we're living one life energetically. We just live different incarnations of, which also is a reflection of what we're learning on this planet or in 3D reality. We're learning that that life continuity, and that we are a constant in the universe. Energy cannot die. But when we incarnate into 3D so that we can have physical experience, so that we can learn in this reality, this kind of matter, then what happens is most of us, we detach from that higher essence, higher form. And then what a lot of us do is we try to reconnect it back through, let's just say, organized means of dogma, things that were given from our parents and our grandparents. And we miss the true essence of who we are. And no matter who or what you are, everyone has things, everyone has stuff. I mean, heck, like I said, I'm not the person I was. And people often say to me, Jim, do you consider yourself evolved? And I say no. because where, where I can go compared to where I am is not even comprehensible when I look at the totality of me. And that's why I bring certain episodes to you guys, like episode number 6, when I talk about living your highest potential. And, people run around saying, live your highest potential, live your highest potential. And for most people, that means being an air quote success in life, in the business, in the body, in the homes, in the cars, all things that are transient. I mean, you're just experiencing those things when you're in this lifetime. I'm sitting here as I'm doing this episode. I don't even know why I'm doing this episode, but I just know that I am for a reason. And I know that it just popped in my mind to do it. So we will see where it goes. But take what was said to me, because it doesn't just pertain to me, it pertains to all of us. When we get into alignment with the higher essence of who we are, things we've not even dreamed possible become possible for us, because then we're tapping into what I call divine mind. And we're hearing divine mind, and we're following divine mind. And that's when we truly are harnessing the power of the universe. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.